When we deploy our application to another server, like a staging server or a production server, we want to make sure that these tables, makes, and models are pre-populated with data. Because what we have here is reference data that should be available in all environments. So I'm going to use code-first migrations to populate these tables. And with this technique, every time I deploy my application to a different machine, I can simply run all the migrations, and any framework will create my database and populate it with the reference data. So I'm going to start by creating an empty migration because I'm not going to make any changes to the domain model. So .NET EF migrations add seed database. Okay, here's our new migration. So here, I'm going to execute SQL statements to populate my tables. So this method takes a parameter, which is a migration builder. We can use that. Dot SQL. So I'm going to add 3 records to our makes table. Insert into makes, the column name, and values. In single quotes, I'm going to add make1. Now I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times and add make2 and make3. Now similarly, I'm going to add a few model records. So migration builder, .SQL, insert into models. The columns are name and make ID, values. The first one, I'm going to use make1 dash model A. And for make ID, I'm going to use 1. Now, this is a simplified SQL statement. Here, I'm assuming that 1 is the ID of make1. You cannot always make such assumptions because the ID column in the database is an identity column. So the values are assigned by SQL Server at runtime. A more reliable approach is to select a make record by its name, find its ID, and then put it here. But we don't want to deal with complex SQL statements here, so this is good for now. Now I'm going to duplicate this line a couple of times and add a couple more models for the first make. And similarly, I'm going to duplicate these 3 lines, change all ones to 2, and these are going to be for our second make. And one more time. Okay, so this is our up method. Now, as a best practice, whenever you modify the code inside the up method, you should always implement the down method. Because if you downgrade your database, you want to make sure it's in a consistent state. So in this method, I'm going to delete the records inside these tables. Migration builder, .SQL, delete from makes, duplicate, delete from models. Actually, we don't need the second line because when we delete the makes, all associated models will also be deleted. Now, just to clarify the problem with our current implementation, if I apply this migration and then downgrade the database, all the makes will be removed. And then if I reapply this migration, my new makes, their IDs are not going to be 1, 2, 3. They're going to be 4, 5, 6. That's why I said the proper way to populate these tables is to select the make ID instead of hard coding it here. In case you're curious, let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to replace 1 with select ID from makes where name equals make1. And I'm going to put this select statement in parentheses. So here's my select statement. And I also need a closing parenthesis, and that's used for the values part of my SQL statement. So we put the values inside parentheses. Now I'm going to pause the recording and apply this change to all lines here. So here's the end result. Of course, there's a better way to write this SQL statement. So you can see with each insert, we're going to query our makes table. A better way would be to query it once, store the result in a variable, and then use that variable here. But in this application, for only these few records, it doesn't make a difference. So save. Now .NET EF database update. Beautiful. Now here, I'm going to right click makes and look at all the records in this table. So we have 3 makes. Their IDs are 1, 2, 3. We also have a few models. So here are the models for make 1. Now, if I downgrade the database and upgrade it again, all my records should be associated properly. So here are our migrations. I want to unapply this last migration, seed database. So the migration before that is apply constraints. So .NET EF database update apply constraints. So this will downgrade our database to apply constraints migration. Now, let's take a look at the data in the makes table. So there is nothing here. And now if I reapply this last migration seed database, our model records should be created and associated with their corresponding make properly. So .NET EF database update. Okay, now let's take a look at the data in our makes table one more time. So look, the IDs are changed to 4, 5, 6. And if we look at the models, once again, we have 9 models for 3 makes. So this verifies that we implemented the up and down methods properly. Actually, I noticed I made a tiny mistake here. In the down method, here we are deleting all the records in the makes table. Now, technically, in this particular case, it didn't cause any issues because we created this migration shortly after creating the makes table. However, if we had a few migrations in between, chances are there could be, let's say, 10 other records in the makes table. We don't want to delete them all. We want to delete only the records that we create in this migration. So here's the proper way to implement the down method. Delete from makes where name in, and here we add make 1, make 2, and make 3. This is the proper implementation.